Today on the podcast, we are going to be talking with one of my great friends, JoAnn Crohn, and she was actually a guest on the podcast way in our early days. I feel like it might have been episode 3, 4, 5, somewhere right in there. People love hearing from JoAnn, but what makes me excited to share this with you here today is because this is from a conversation that she and I had in our Simplify Your Summer Online Summit from 2023. This was one of the most popular presentations we had. And so I'm excited to share it with you here on the podcast. But what I'm even more excited about is the fact that we are almost to our Simplify Your Summer Online Summit for 2024. It is coming up on May 28th, and you can sign up for free. You can attend all of the presentations in the summit, and we've got 30 speakers this year. So you will want to sign up for your free ticket at simplifyyoursummer.com. With that, let's join this conversation that JoAnn and I had back in 2023.
Well, hey there, I am Jennifer Roskamp, a certified life coach and homeschool mom of 9 who is passionate about helping women just like you embrace the here and now while also being focused on creating the life you actually want. In reality, it's not about thinking life will get so much better or so much easier when you fill in the blank. Let's work on creating a life you love now. So let's dive in and get started on redefining Supermom to be someone who is present, intentional, and content rather than perfect in our homes, in our lives, and in our own skin. Let's get started. This is the Intentional Mom Podcast.
Yes. All of them.
Well, hello again and welcome back to I am so excited that today we are talking with JoAnn Crohn. She is a parenting educator who helps moms feel confident in everything from raising empowered, self-sufficient kids to dropping the anxiety and guilt out of modern parenthood. Amen to that, right? She's an accomplished writer, author, podcast host of the No Guilt Mom podcast, and speaker appearing in national media and founder of the company No Guilt Mom. Her specialty is talking to both parents and kids with her parenting course, Common Active Parenting, coaching membership, Balance VIP, and her self-paced digital courses for kids in handling big emotions, getting kids to help out more, creating a morning routine, and conquering the homework drama. Right. JoAnn is a former elementary school teacher with a master's degree in curriculum and instruction, as well as a national board certified teacher in middle childhood education. She's a mom to 2 kids, ages 13 and 9. Wow, they're growing up, huh?
They're 14 now. My daughter's 14. I can't believe that.
Welcome to teenage second year in, right? I just realized I have 4 teenagers in my house right now. 4.
It is definitely different.
Yeah. Well, welcome, JoAnn. Thanks so much for being here.
It is a pleasure to be here, and I'm excited.
Yeah. Well, first, these kids, can you tell us a little bit about them?
So my own kids they're 14 and 9. My daughter is a freshman in high school, just finishing up her freshman year. That's different. It's so interesting when kids become teenagers. You notice that shift in childhood where before they were very excited to see you, they loved you. And now it's like, just last night for dinner, she was talking about, we made burgers and she's like, this burger looks great. I can't wait to eat this burger. And I'm like, do I sense sarcasm there? She's like, no, I really wanted to eat the burger. So it's like, it's so interesting, the transition, because like teenagers just are not aware of how they come across. a lot of the times. And navigating that parenting wise has been fascinating and a little frustrating at times, if I'm to be honest.
Yeah.
My 9-year-old, he's in 4th grade, and he's very into Roblox and playing games online and bringing up FaceTime and having his friends on FaceTime while they play Roblox together. And I'm just enjoying his childhood right now, especially because I have a teenager. And I'm like, oh, you still want to cuddle? Okay, that's cool.
I know you embrace it a little more with subsequent kids because you realize like how fast it goes and just the changes where it's like, I'm not ready for that yet. You know, you kind of just figure that all out, I think, the first time around. So really what's interesting is, you know, the challenges from both sides, right? You know, as a former teacher, you know, you understand what's happening with kids and families. And so we're going to talk a little bit about routines today, and you understand the value of routines from both sides of that. You know, but in the summer, kids and sometimes parents hear the word routines and they're like, no, thank you, right? Like routines are like, fine, I will sign up for those and do those with you during the school year, but I am not doing those with you in the summer. So how can we, I guess that's maybe a place to start, is how can we reframe the idea of a routine so that maybe it doesn't feel like something that, especially our teenagers, are like, no.
Well, with anything routines happen regardless if you're intentional about them or not. It's just whether you are proactive and want to be intentional about the routine versus just letting the routine fall into place. Like if your teenager, and this is totally typical for teenagers and okay to do, if your teenager sleeps until 11 a.m. every day, guess what? That's a routine. Like they're in a routine already. They're sleeping till 11 a.m. And if everybody's happy with that situation and like they're getting the stuff done that they need to get done, great. Awesome. The way that routines can help us out though, is especially if us as parents, like I work from home, I have expectations that I need to do for my company and managing my team. And I have to set routines for my kids around my work time so that I can get stuff done and they are self-sufficient away from me as well. So routines aren't so much a things of like, you have to do this, and this, but it's really like almost a really great boundary setting where you're carving out this time that you need and they're carving out the time that they need, but they're also making sure to put in those things that they're doing that help the rest of the family. And that may be encouraging them to try some new things during the summer as well.
Yeah, totally. I'm so when we talk routines, they look different. Like I know in my house with such a big age range of kids, like I know that routines look different for different ages. And so maybe talking about these young kids first. So like how might the routines that either we set up or our kids kind of fall into, how do we maybe want to guide these in the summer, and how would that look a little bit different than during the school year? Or maybe it wouldn't. When it comes to routines, do we want them to be consistent year round, or do we want to have a little bit of flexibility where it can be different?
I would say definitely flexibility because your schedule changes during the summer. So why shouldn't your routine change during the summer as well? There's no need to stick to the same bedtime and same wake up time that you have during the school year because it's just not necessary. And I want to push back against those fears and say like, oh my gosh, if we get off this routine, then they'll have a hard time waking up for the school year. Yes, but there's always a transition between routines. And it's just as simple as being like a week before school starts, you start pushing up bedtime and making wake up time a little bit earlier until school starts. So it's like there's always a way to transition. Talking about little kids. So if you have like a toddler or if you have a preschooler, they have drastically different needs than say my high schooler does and even my 9-year-old. Like kids getting older is the most miraculous thing for your time and for your freedom. Like it really is. It's wonderful. Like don't fear it. Your kid's getting older.
Yeah.
Because when they're younger, these routines, like I was thinking when I was creating routines for my son during the summer, and I would just create them in my mind. I'm like, I need to do something that is going to totally wear him out in the morning. And then he's going to take a nap or he's going to rest during the afternoon. And then we're going to have to go and do something else in the afternoon. And usually, because I live in Phoenix, our summers are horrible. It would be something either in a pool that we would do. signing him up for swim lessons and making sure he's doing that, meeting friends at the pool, especially another mom I'm friends with, and we could hang out while we watch our kids at the same time. Or going to like the mall is always great. Like my grandma used to take me mall walking with her when I was a kid. Like I would do the like routes with her, and then she'd meet all her friends at Luby's cafeteria for a lunch at the end. And I'm like, well, that's perfect to do with kids. My grandma got exercise. She got social time. If you think about that with little kids, find some exercise, find some social time for yourself. You're taking care of you and you're wearing them out.
Yeah. So talking about wearing them out, let's hone in on bedtime routines a little bit. So bedtime routines for these younger ages. What is that like in the summer? And do we need to feel like, I like how you kind of address some of that pressure that we might be feeling, like to change things up or keep things the same. And if I do this now, what is that going to look like then? So help us balance some of that out.
Well, if you want kids to go to bed, like you need to make sure that you wear them out during the day. Because like a kid is not going to go to bed who wakes up at like 10 a.m., like a toddler or whatever. Like they're going to stretch out their whole day and they're going to go to bed later. So it's important to think about the entire day when you're thinking about bedtime. That said, I would just ask myself the question, what time do I want my kids in bed? Like, when do I want them there? It's going to be different for every single person. During the school time, it's dictated by when school starts the next morning and working back from there to make sure they get sleep. But I mean, like my sister, she is a paramedic in a local hospital and her shifts are like 10 a.m. to 10 p.m. And so while it's not conventional, they have pushed their toddler's schedule around so that the toddler is still up when she gets home, else she just wouldn't get to see him. It works for them. He is watched by my parents, so he doesn't have like a preschool he has to attend. He could sleep whenever during the day. So there's no set right answer. It is just what works for you. When do you want your kids to go to bed?
Yeah.
And this could be something that you talk about with them too. Obviously, don't talk with the toddler about what time he wants to go to bed. You're not going to get good answers there. But like they get like upper elementary, like third grade, fourth grade, fifth grade. Those are the times.
So that when the kids start to get older, that kind of age, it starts with having the conversation. Is that kind of where we should start?
Yeah, start with having that conversation. Ask like, what do you want your bedtime to be during the summer? And my son, he always wants his bedtime pushed back during the summer. He's like, I want to stay up till midnight. That's not okay with me. Like, I need my sleep. I cannot be up until midnight with him. And so it's a compromise where I'm like, you know what? Midnight is not going to work for me. And I spin it in a positive way. I'm like, because then like I'm so sleepy and I won't be able to tuck you into bed or cuddle you. Like, and he really likes those things. And of course that's one of the reasons, but the other reason is I just can't stay up, Jennifer. I can't stay up.
I hear you. Age, it's a funny thing, isn't it?
Yeah, I've always been that way, so I don't know if I can say.
No, I definitely feel it with age. Like, man, even in the last 5 years, I don't know. I'm just, I don't know. I'm getting there, JoAnn. It's scary. High school age kids, like, how do we do this with them? We want something that makes them happy. We want something that makes the household can still function. You know, how do we find? It's got to be a compromise there, really.
It is a compromise with high schoolers. And of course, like the older they get, the more freedom they get. Because with high schoolers in particular, like they're going to be out of the house in a few years living on their own. And I want to make sure that they can manage bedtime. And so what I've done with my high schooler and what has worked really well is we had talk a lot about sleep and the need for sleep. Actually teachers, because their circadian rhythm shifts back. Like it's a known thing. They have the tendency to go to bed later and then want to wake up later. And that's completely normal for teenagers. In fact, side note, the school system does not honor that. And that gets very, very tricky. But during the summer, they have that flexibility and freedom to stay up later. Now, saying that, there are some guidelines around it, especially in our house. And of course, you have to think about what works for you. The guidelines are that like you cannot be making any noise that disturbs the rest of the family during that time. If you want to stay in your bed and read or in the my daughter's situation, watch Taylor Swift videos, totally fine. Just making sure that it's not bothering the rest of the family. Also, I encourage my daughter, and encourage is a rather loose word because I kind of like make her pick something. She has to have an activity during the summer. Like she can't just be doing nothing during the summer, at least like one structured week of camp during the summer, like where she's like going and learning something, trying something new, because teens like tend to keep in their box if they're not kind of pushed to try it. And then the rest of the time is up to her to relax, to unwind. In our city, they do modified year round, so summer's only 6 weeks.
Oh,
So if you have a vacation, if you have one camp, that leaves about 2 to 3 weeks where she kind of gets to decide things on her own. That's fine, not me. Everyone needs that break.
That modified school year looks a lot different than what we experience here for sure. So let's say that there's a mom or a Connect listening who is used to during the summer, like not really having anything in terms of bedtime routines or even knowing like what to do with it. It's just kind of like a free for all. And let's say that she's thinking, you know what, I would like to develop a healthy-ish routine. How can she bridge that conversation with her kids, to not get pushed back? Like, well, we've always just been able to do what we want. Now, how can she start? Let's just say.
So I don't think there will ever be a time where kids don't give us pushback. I think it's just in parenting. And it's really us who kind of build our tolerance for the pushback, what we're willing to argue against, what we're just saying, this is how it is. With something like bedtime, if you need that time to yourself in the evening, and I think everybody needs that time to themselves in the evening, so you should not feel guilty at all about wanting that or needing it. Decide what is ideal for you. In your perfect world, where do you want to be in your bed without any kids bothering you, or maybe not even in your bed, just like somewhere you can watch Netflix for a little while? Like, what time is that? And then work from there. So once you have your time, like say you want to be in your bed at 9, I think kids' bedtime needs to be like 8:30. And you go to your kids and be like, hey, we usually don't have this time, during the summer, but this summer, like for me to be like really a happier parent, and you want a happier parent, right? This is always how I phrase it. I need some time to myself. And so at 8:30, and you don't even have to bring this up for discussion with them because you're setting your boundaries for yourself. At 8:30, I'm going to be tucking you in. And if you don't feel tired at that time, that's totally cool. You can stay in your bed and like read a book or do something else, but it needs to be in there. And this works for upper elementary and up. Obviously, like the younger ones, totally different story. You're going to have to wear them out during the day and then get them in bed and kind of enforce it that way without much like back and forth. A lot of things I see, parents come to us and are like, yeah, well, then they argue that they didn't get like their hours worth of screen time that day, or like kids like are very experts at picking apart experts and finding like loopholes and exceptions. They're like the best lawyers ever. They will always find them. One in particular in screen time, her son comes to her and is like, you know what? I was researching what game I wanted to play on Roblox during this time. So this time doesn't count for my screen time because I wasn't playing games during it. So that doesn't count. And be ready for it. And be ready to just say, you know what? Screen time is your time on screens. And that's it. And you get an hour. And how you choose to spend that is your choice. Spend it however you want. But you get that time. So don't fear setting those like hard boundaries with kids to protect your own sanity. A really good clue is if you start feeling resentful towards your kids. If you're starting to feel like they ask for more time at bedtime and you feel like you almost have to give them more time at bedtime because they have brought up a really, really good point, but then you're very, very mad about it, that's a sign your boundary's been crossed. And that's not okay. And you could come back and be like, you know what? No, this is the time we agreed on. This is the time we're going to go to bed.
Yeah.
Will there be pushback?
Yeah.
Totally.
Expect it, right? Expect it.
Expect it. Expect it. When
Yeah.
we changed bedtime with my daughter and we were like, you know what? We had the thing where I would tuck her in every night. And then she started pushing back, pushing back, pushing back. And I told her, I'm like, you know what? I am available to tuck you in at 9 p.m. If you are not ready for bed at 9 p.m., cool. You're going to be tucking in yourself. And she's like, okay. And so the very first night, it was 9:30 p.m. And she came to me. Could I have tucked in? And that's when I had to be like, nope. I said 9 p.m. And she cried for an hour, a tantrum for an hour. And her being 9, and I know she was being like, she was very, very upset, but that was something I knew was going to happen. That was something my husband was there for too. So I would just look over at him and he'd be like, she'll be fine. I stayed in my bed. After that first night and not budging, she didn't try it the second night because she knew I wasn't going to budge. So there is power in that.
Yeah. So what I hear you saying is you're talking about enforcement. So that's always a fine line too. So a couple of questions I had, and I want to circle back to the enforcement here in a minute, but I feel like I already know kind of what you would say, which is I wanted to ask you if there's something that we should avoid when figuring out what these routines would look like. And I feel like something you said made me kind of think that I know what your answer would be. So I'm curious. So I'm wondering if you would say that something we should avoid is assuming that something that is someone else's routine is going to work for us. Like we should avoid not making sure it's customizable and that it functions well for our house. So I don't know. That's what I read into something you said, but how would you answer that when it comes to setting up these routines? What should we avoid?
I would say there is no right routine ever. So it's called black and white thinking. Avoid the thinking that there's a right routine and there's a wrong routine because it just doesn't exist. There is the routine that works for your family. Do you have to follow it the same every single night? No, it's really a loose framework that you have put together. So if, for instance, you have an event that you go to, like a family party, and it goes past your kid's bedtime, that's okay. That's okay to stay at that family event. You don't have to keep your kid's bedtime that night. Just when you come home, it's straight up bedtime. Yeah. So avoid making it too rigid, too like that you have to follow it exactly, and just allow it to be that customizable, easy thing.
Yeah, I like that too. And I think also I have to remind myself too to know that it's probably going to need to be tweaked and changed as we go. Like we're going to constantly kind of be evolving in what that might look like, not only as things change, but just, like you talk about, there's events, there's situations that make the timing a little bit different, but there's also just the idea that sometimes when things get old and stale and we get unmotivated, it's like sometimes we just have to change things up and just change how we're doing things. So I think, it shouldn't be too rigid. And I think also, I would assume that you would say too, we have to be flexible, give ourselves permission to be flexible as we need to, carrying it out going forward.
Definitely. And you should never feel like you yourself are trapped in a routine, because if you feel like you're trapped, that's a good indication that you can change it up. Exactly.
Yeah. So let's circle back to that enforcement. You gave an example of, this is what we said, you agreed to it. I know that you would like me to go back on our agreement, but I'm not going to. So how do we enforce, even though they're going to be, a framework and kind of loose, how do you suggest that we do kind of enforce, and how important is enforcement?
So with enforcement, I think the big worry is that we'll come off as unfeeling and mean. And that's not at all what enforcement is. Enforcement is having this boundary and then being able to empathize with your child when it's really, really hard to make a change in routine. So when my daughter was really fighting against it, it wasn't like I was yelling like, go to your room, I'm not going to do this. It was, she was coming in crying and I was like patting her back and be like, I know this is a change, and changes are really, really, really hard. And that's all I would say. So I was still there as that caring force, but I also stuck to what I said because I knew in the long run, and this is something I always think about when I have to set a boundary that is hard at first. I knew in the long run that if I didn't set this boundary, my resentment would keep building and building, and it would come off to my daughter in ways that I was short, that I was snippy. And it would just be this attitude and this relationship that I didn't want to cultivate. Setting the boundary then and going through it for one night was better than having all that resentment and anger appear down the road. And so that's also something really good to keep in mind. You're playing the long game when you're enforcing. You're making it easier for future Jennifer, or I'm giving a gift to future JoAnn in this scenario.
Because it's hard in that moment. And so we're not giving ourselves a gift in that moment. We're saying,
No.
hard thing now so that I can enjoy this gift later, for sure. And what I like
Exactly.
what you said to her too is I think sometimes, especially when we're trying to enforce a boundary, whether it's with kids or with adults, is we tend to over talk about them. We tend to over explain, right? I like how you were just like, I understand that this is hard. New things are hard. And that was it. It wasn't more repeating, but this is going to be good for you because then, right?
You could just say what's hard about it and give them vocabulary to express it. So like in that moment, the reason she was crying is because change is hard. It is so hard. And so when they're upset, it's nothing you've done wrong as a parent. It's they're having the appropriate emotion at the appropriate time because change is so hard. So let them go through that appropriate emotion. Let them feel it because no amount of explaining is going to make that emotion go away.
Right.
The only thing that'll make it go away is if they go through and you're there as this calm presence just to comfort them through it.
Yeah. Yeah. But so good. So that's so true. So what is one, let's say again that there's parents, there's moms here who say, you know what, I'm ready. I want to start, it's early in the summer. I want to be able to have a great summer. I want to not have fighting at bedtime and all of that stuff. What is like a quick action tip that they can do right now to just kind of start to get the ball rolling with setting up maybe a healthy routine? Would it be just to kind of sit and think about what that would look like? Where would they start?
They could think about what it would look like. Definitely. I would push a little bit further and have a conversation with their kids about, what time do we want bedtime over the summer? And then even have kids write down their bedtime and start this bedtime routine list on the fridge, just with bedtime on it right now. Just have that time and bedtime. Because what happens is when we have these conversations, when things get cold, kids I say this as a joke, but kids are the best gaslighters in the whole world.
Oh, yeah.
They will make you doubt your decisions and doubt your reality all the time. So writing down the time you agreed on and putting it someplace public gives you a place to be like, nope, we said this right there.
Yeah.
And it prevents against the kid gaslighting.
That's so funny. That is so true. Like I call it selective memory, right? They have that selective.
Yeah.
We never talked about that.
We never
did that. I agreed to that. Oh my gosh, it's so crazy, isn't it? So
it happens all the time.
Yeah, I never thought about but that is what it is, right? They're the best gaslighters. I love that.
Yeah. Doubting your own reality and what you said. You're like, did I say? No, I did not.